Dewo is Igbo Nigerian for greetings, but it does have a deeper meaning. And that is long life to all of you. That is what I hope and pray for each and every one of you who have joined us in this program today. It is my pleasure to welcome you. I am Okedibia, Dr. NwaMazi. Welcome to Chism Live. And this is a very exciting show. I have some wonderful individuals today. One that you know, my co-host, Otwaja, you the on your house. You did Gawo.
Yeah, guys,
Wonderful. God. It is also my pleasure to welcome our special guest, NwaMazi, I beg your pardon, Onyemobi. It's an exciting young man. Hello, Desta, how are you?
And
Desta, I'm so used to calling you Desta, but I'm going to call you NwaMazi today. And NwaMazi is a lead programmer at Retail Service Systems, Inc. He's a web developer, e-solutions expert. He studied mechanical engineering at University of Maryland, College Park. Welcome.
Thank you.
Otraja, Yudi, you do know Desta. You remember him when he was a much younger young man, full of
I remember.
And I read his comments. He's still full of fire, and that's why I invited him to be here today. I couldn't pick a better person.
So happy to have him. Really, I think this is long overdue.
Yes.
Yeah, it was long overdue.
Our program today is a very important question, and that is: do Igbo Nigerians have Jewish ancestry? I've read a lot about this. I've seen videos and conversations about this topic. And for some people, it's a welcome possibility. For some people, it raises their ire. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to start with NwaMazi. Who are the Igbos of Nigeria? For those people out there who are watching us who don't know, who are the Igbos?
Well, that's a very good question. And one answer is Igbos are a group of Nigerians of African descent that trace their ancestry to southeastern Nigeria. We are Africans. We are people that have lived in the Niger River Valley for thousands of years. And currently, most of us have Nigerian citizenship because that's where the bulk of our ancestors stayed for thousands of years. So that is one very historically based answer to that question.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I agree. Let me also add, Ndi Igbo, a politically fragmented group. And when I say politically fragmented, I'm not saying it negatively. And each of those groups have a centralized rulership, so to speak. For example, in Igbo culture, all of Igbo people, one of the some of the most important, if not the most important groups, are the Enri or Nri group, right? Then you have the Aro or Arochukwu Confederacy. Then you have the Igbo people of Abo, and then Onisha, the other side of the Delta. So, the Niger River. So Igbo people occupy the western part of the Niger River, Abo, Asaba, Iseluku, so on and so forth. And then you have those people on the eastern side of it. Now, the genesis or the origins of Ndi Igbo, right, varies. Some people believe that Igbo people came from the west, right? If you're like from Onisha and all that, while where you come from, Arochukwu, right? We came from Amambonye Mporo. I'm from Mporo. We came from Amampoto Ibibio, who subsequently came from the Cameroons, who subsequently came out of Central Africa, the birthplace of humanity. Then you have the migration to the north, the east, west, and the south. And through evolution, people adapted to their environment. That's why if you look way up in China or in Mongolia, you got black folks over there, the Black Mongolians. You got black people, Africans in India. You have the Blackamoor. We're all over the globe. And if you come to, even when you come to North America, you also have tribes over there. I can't remember exactly what those people are called. The Olmecs, I think that's what they're called, the Olmecs of North America, that have black features and all that. And even some of the Mayan kings have known to be African, right? So the idea that Igbo people are Jews is really beyond me, because what you're assuming is that human migration started from the north, from Europe, or maybe from the Middle East to Central Africa, and then, of course, begat us people as Igbos, as opposed to the fact that humanity started in Central Africa, then migrated east, west, north, and south. This is scholarship that is agreed upon by archaeologists all over the world. So if that is the fact, and if that is the scientific proof and evidence that we have in terms of the origins of humanity, then there's no way Igbo people are Jews, because what you're assuming is that we started migration from the Middle East downward.
Dexter, okay. NwaMazi, is that I think it's important that you tell us why NwaMazi. Is that a title or is that your name? Because I know you as Dexter.
Well, in Arrow, you are basically three things. You're either Mazi, which is the head of the household, NwaMazi, which is a daughter of a Mazi, or NwaMazi, which is son of Mazi.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Because my father is still alive, I'm NwaMazi.
Okay, NwaMazi.
And as a matter of fact, I'm not even going to call him Dexter. As I'm concerned, that name is not relevant to me. It's NwaMazi Onyemobi.
NwaMazi. Okay. You know, you've got to ask this question so you get it right. So based on what Dibia Ochoaja has just indicated, why do you think that we Igbos believe that we are Jewish, or we have Jewish ancestry?
Yeah. One thing I want to add for the users is that I'm actually one of the founders of Igbo Cyber Shrine, which is probably one of the top websites on the internet for authentic Igbo spirituality and culture, and it's actually been around for 10 years. And we've touched on this subject. A few years ago, a fellow released a film called Re-Emerging, The Jews of Nigeria. And so I actually watched the film, and I was totally blown away by the misinformation that was in this film. I think there's a lot of different issues that we have. I think number one is lack of written records. So for most of us, you know, written language didn't occur until the European colonization. So anything prior to that is oral history. And the reality is that oral history can be fairly iffy sometimes, especially the further back you go. If you go back one or two generations, it can actually be very solid. But once you start going back further, it becomes less and less verifiable and actual provable. So because of lack of written records, basically our history is in fact very fragmented, and we have multiple origins. Most people in Igbo land have three main stories. Number one, when you ask them where they came from. Number one, another village in Igbo land. So you'll say, oh, well, our ancestors migrated from this place in modern day Anambra, this place in modern day Enugu to our current location. Number two, a place outside of Igbo land. So Aros, for example, will say that some of our ancestors, came from the Igbo heartland, wherever that may be, but then others came from, Ibibio land. In fact, Aro was part of Ibibio land until the Aro Ibibio War that happened a couple hundred years ago. And number three is a story of coming from nowhere. The people that say they came from nowhere, basically, they've been there for so long, they don't even remember how they got there. Those are the people that are probably, if you want to say are aboriginal, are the folks that have no record of coming from anywhere else. So those are the three ones. We have multiple origins. Multiple origins. Some of us came from the Cameroons. Some of us came from up north. Some of us came from the west. And we have a unified identity today, but we do not have one singular identity. So that's number one. Number two, Christianity. Christianity came, and something that our folks adopted. And in my opinion, what people tend to do is when they are practicing a religion, they want to see themselves in that religion, right? So if you're not practicing your ancestral faith, there's always a question as to how do your people fit in with this current thing that you're doing? So if you happen to be from the Middle East and you're practicing Islam, well, the thing about it is that Islam, the stuff that's in the Quran mentions the places that you're around. You say, oh, yeah, this place here, you can go and point to it right there, right? Like it's something that's a part of your identity. If you are an Indian practicing Hinduism, it's in your language. It actually is in your history. But for us Africans, now, unless you're an African or Ethiopian Christian, right, or Egyptian Christian, for the most part, Africa is not mentioned at all in the Abrahamic religions, except for Egypt and Ethiopia. Everywhere else is pretty much, and then also Cyrene, Libya. But apart from that, pretty much Africa is not mentioned. And so, in my opinion, what's happened is people desire to see themselves for mental health state. They want to see themselves in their religion. So because there's no mention of Igbos or Nigeria in the Old Testament and New Testament, well, we have to go and fit ourselves in there because we have to justify. That's my opinion that we do this. And
no, go ahead.
And the fact that some other groups, because they have a more centralized leadership, they have a more central mythology. So, for instance, the Yoruba people, they had two main kingdoms, Oyo and Ile-Ife. And Ile-Ife, basically, which is the older one, they said that their founder, Duduwa, I think he came down on a golden chain. And they're all children, all the Obas are children of Duduwa. Now, we know that that's not true historically, but it's a common mythology. And of course, people don't come down from heaven on a golden chain, but it's a common myth. We unfortunately don't have that. We have a host of different creation myths and origin myths. So in my opinion, there's like a big void in our culture that has led to this issue. And it seems to be improving. Honestly, it's actually disheartening how much I've seen the amount of energy that's been wasted on this fallacious theory.
Yeah, that's NwaMazi really, he made a lot of important points, which I agree with. Number one, lack of central leadership, and because you don't have a centralized leadership, and we don't have Igbo, we just don't have that. You have all these autonomous communities with different, Eze's and leaders and all that stuff, and they don't agree with one another. So I agree with that premise and that observation and scholarship, actually, because there's a lot of truth in it. Now, something else that I would like to add to it is Black Africans, including the Igbos and the Cameroonians, we had literature. We always had that. See, the myth is that literature came from the colonizers. No, the colonizers came and destroyed what you had. If you go to Ghana, for example, things are written down using Adinkra symbols.
That's true.
Right? If you go to Cameroon and Igbo land in the old days, we use Nsibidi writings. As a matter of fact, there's a king called Ibrahim, I think it's Njoya or something like that. He was a Cameroonian king and had one of the largest libraries of writing, record, history, all those things that they needed in scholarship in his kingdom was available in his library. But when the British came, they destroyed it. Sort of like if you go to Abreba, you know what that is? We had pyramids called Nsude. You will see no evidence of it now. It's called the Nsude pyramids in Abreba. The problem with our people, remember the idea behind this Jewish myth, because that's what I call it, it's just a myth, like most religious myth, historical myth. You include myth in your history, right? Not all human history is based on recorded facts. Some human history is mythology, and then they incorporated it into part of their history. The idea of Igbos being Jews is a recent phenomenon. It didn't exist in the 60s. It didn't exist in the 70s either. And for the most part in the 80s, it didn't really exist. Nobody talked about that. I never heard about it till later part of the 90s and early 2000s. And then when the gentleman, Nnamdi Kanu, became the leader of IPOB, then that myth just kind of exploded. Everybody's talking about it. Igbo people saw themselves in Nigeria the way the Jews saw themselves in their supposed internment in Egypt. We're not even talking about what happened to the Jews during the reign of Adolf Hitler in World War II. We're not going to talk about that. And the reason why we're not going to talk about that is because it's not biblical, right? It's not biblical. It's a recent phenomenon that ended in 1945, and then in 1946, Zionism gave Israel Palestine, and that's where they resided. If it wasn't for Lord Zion, Israel would have been in Uganda, because that's where they actually carved out for Israel. But they couldn't unite, how do I say it? They couldn't marry their history with Uganda, but they could marry their history in the Middle East, in Palestine. And that's how they ended up in Palestine. We are just a people who want to associate ourselves with other people that seem to escape from something or had the same kind of history of mistreatment, enslavement. The way we see ourselves in Nigeria is like we are the Israelites of Nigeria. We are the ones that are always persecuted. Whether we're in the north, when something political goes down, the first people that are killed are the Igbos, not the Yorubas in the north. In the west, it's the same thing. The first people that get it are the Igbos, not the Hausas in the west or the Yorubas in the west. We just look at ourselves the way the Jews looked at themselves in their supposed internment in Egypt, a people who are escaping from something, right? And since we have no central leadership, we find it easy to identify ourselves with the Jews, just like you had mentioned. We can use that and find whether it's in language, because some of the things that they attribute as fact about why we should believe that we're Jews, some of those similarities in language can also be found in Chinese language, in a host of other languages. But they couldn't marry that history to the suffrage that we have in Nigeria. So now we're Jews. Not only are we Jews, but we're hoping that by claiming Jewish ancestry, perhaps Israel can come down to realize this nation of Biafra, whatever it is that we're seeking in the East. This is about trying to make alliances by discarding your cultural values, your history, tying yourself with somebody else and hoping that with their influence in the world, that maybe they will help us realize whatever it is that we're trying to realize in Igbo land. It's all political. And then, of course, those people that have no scholarship buy into it because of a sense of inferiority complex that colonization and slavery imported into our brain. So we're just a lot of people, and because, as NwaMazi mentioned, we don't have any central leadership. We don't have any centralized scholarship based on our history, based on our contribution to civilized behavior. We don't have that imported in kids right from when they're babies so that they can grow up to have a sense of self. We just attach ourselves to something else and hope that through some kind of magic wand, our position in the world, particularly in Nigeria, will be better.
I want to comment. I want to agree with you on everything and add, Ochoaja, and add to what you stated about our history. I think our oral history can be kind of flimsy. However, one thing I tell people is that a lot of our history is actually coded in our rituals, especially the rituals that we have every year or every other year. If you look very carefully, a lot of the rituals actually give away, it's like, it gives away so much. It's hidden in plain sight. And in fact, in my opinion, if we put more effort into decoding the rituals, we'll get so much further as a people. And I'm happy you brought up IPOB and Biafra and everything, because yes, there is a political dynamic to that. I read when I did the Reemerging Scam series, I broke down the claims that were made in the video, as well as just in general, the different arguments that these people have made over the years. And to this day, no one has actually been able to refute it, because I was very thorough. I looked at linguistics, I looked at diet, I looked at our holidays, I went down the list, and I demonstrated that when it came to these things, what these people were saying, at the very best, were exaggerations, and at the very worst, were outright lies. And when you now get into the politics of it, I pointed out that in, I think it was in the 90s, there was a young Igbo fellow who actually tried to get citizenship in Israel by claiming, using the law of return, and claiming that his ancestors practiced Judaism. The case was dismissed because it had no merit at all. None.
Yep.
And, you know, I basically was saying, look, a lot of these people who are claiming all these different things, this was really just their way of trying to get out of Nigeria. And,
yes.
And once it became clear that that wasn't going to happen, a lot of them dropped it.
Absolutely.
A lot of them actually, a lot of the people in that movie are reemerging the Jews of Nigeria. A lot of people actually in that movie dropped Judaism when it became clear that it was not going to get them what they wanted, which was out of Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
And that raises the question, you know, for us as a people to be taken seriously, we have to be authentic. Everyone else is. The Yorubas are authentic. The Yorubas could be, a Yoruba man can be Christian or whatever, but he's still Yoruba first.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
What we do on the other hand is not only do we begin to attach ourselves to something different, we literally take on that identity in terms of our language, in terms of our dressing, okay, in terms of our behavior. When you talk about the Jews, you see them wearing the Jewish outfit. They don't wear their own anymore. It's no longer day, it's shalom. I mean, you see gradually where we're changing how we dress spiritually. We're changing that. We're changing how we talk. Our language is changing. For us to be competitive, we have to come back. You said something about decoding some of our traditions. One of the things that we do in Chiism is to remind people, Chi, we are connected to the Most High, right where we are. Chineke is, all right? And if you want to be an authentic person, you have to find that key issue, which is your spirituality. Who are you? Who do you and what do you identify with? And act accordingly. Monachiso, I am one with God. If I am one with God, that's half of the battle. I'm okay. I've got power. I don't need to be searching for power. I already have it in me. We have all those things. We have names for, and that's why I talked about diversity. We call God Chuku or Chi, Chineke, and so on and so forth. And that's because the Igbos are divided into, what do you call it? The Eastern and Mid-Eastern Nigeria. So each of those people in all those different areas have different names for different things, but it's still the same thing. What concerns me about this whole notion of being Jewish, and like you said, it's a way of getting out, okay? But it's a way of getting out for those who have the money and the potential to get out. But when you convince those who can't get out that they are no longer Igbo, right? What damage is that doing? I'm asking you or Namdi to take, Yudi to take this up. What damage does it do for those who don't get a chance to go anywhere, right? They have now been convinced that they are no longer Igbo. What is the damage being done for generations of Igbo from then?
Cultural suicide. Cultural suicide is what these people are engaging in. There are a couple places whom I'm not going to name, but you know exactly where I'm talking about, that have bought this hook, line, and sinker. And because of that, people don't regard them as serious anymore. There's a particular kingdom in Anambra, like I said, I'm not going to name, that even went so far as to fabricated, what is it called? Artifacts. It's a total fraud. They actually fabricated artifacts saying, "Oh, this is Obu Gad." It was all, they changed the name and they said this is Gad, and Gad is supposed to be the son of Eri and so forth. And it's like, no, this is fraud. This is clearly not. This is clearly something you made very recently. Wait, Dangote cement. This is not an ancient thing. This is fraud. Now think about how much energy could be directed into our authentic artifacts, our authentic traditions, our authentic rituals, and how we can get tourism around that versus fraudulent. This is pure fraud that they're committing. And other people have also bought, they haven't gone that far, but they've also bought into things that are just totally unverifiable, and it's not really helping anybody at all.
What does cultural suicide do for us? Because we can want to be Biafra and all of that stuff, but we're still Nigerians, right? Mm-hmm. How do we compete as a people in Nigeria when we're not unified, when our eyes are elsewhere outside of Nigeria? Well, how do we fit in? How do we make ourselves what's the word I'm looking for? How do we become competitive? How are we meaningful in the whole scheme of things when we don't really embrace who we are? So why should anybody be interested in who we are?
Nobody's going to be interested in who we are because we're not interested in who we are, right? We are not. We want to be somebody else. Dr. Henry Clark, mm-hmm. for example, and I'm going to use this, and relate it to Igbo Jews. He says that Black Muslims, as in the United States, of course, are just disgruntled Baptists.
Yes. Yep.
Pissed off at the religion of the oppressor.
Yeah.
Okay. Igbo Jews are disgruntled Christians who are pissed off about the way Christianism is taking advantage of the population and go from frying pan into the fire. You leave one mind, you leave one philosophy that has totally messed you up due to slavery and colonization, sapping every mindset of self-awareness that you have, and just supplant it with something else.
Something new.
Right? That is just going to further erode your sense of self, which we don't have right now. Listen, colonization has done a lot of damage to our psyche, and slavery, slavery first, then colonization later. We don't have any institutions in Nigeria, right, that educate the young people and give them a sense of self so that when they become adults, they could build a nation onto themselves. The idea of having a Pan-African mindset is lost. And the reason why it's lost is because the church and Islam, which you can credit to people like Usman Dan Fodio, we don't have the mindset anymore. It's going to take forums such as this that we're having right now. It's going to take the Ochoaja, Dibia, Udi Onyoha, the Okedibia, the NwaMazis of this world to continue to talk about this stuff until we're able to get the ears of leadership that may be able to institute some of the ideas that we have so that we could chart a better cause for Igbo people and all Black people. Mm-hmm. Right now, philosophies are spread one way and one way only, through a policy of blood and iron. If the leadership likes what they hear spiritually, they could make it a state religion. You will either have to conform or be put to the sword. That's how Christianity fell into Africa. Nobody negotiated a condition with us. Nobody came to Africa and said, do you mind being a Christian? Is it okay? Because if it's not okay, it's all right. No problem, no pressure. They put a sword in you. They beat you down. They changed your name from Kunta Kinte to Toby. The king of Belgium had to amputate 2 million people for you to believe that he's serious about ripping your head off if you don't do what he wants. We've been under the gun for a long time, to the point now that we look at those people that are oppressing us as superior. Now we want to be like them. Now you're dealing with Stockholm syndrome. You are actually elevating the same person that is stabbing you in the back. You've elevated them above who you are.
Mm.
There's no educational system anywhere that I know in Africa right now that promotes African history. All human systems are products of religion. You cannot be Pan-African in your mindset. You cannot understand what nation formation is all about. You cannot understand what nation management is all about or nation building. You have to have a mindset that your primordial instincts is part of human evolution. Europeans do European things. They don't bend for nobody. The Chinese do Chinese things. They don't bend for anybody. All cultures in this world that are relevant don't bend for anybody. But we do. We're like dogs under the table while the master is eating with the family, and they're just throwing scraps under the table for us, and we're over there wagging our tail and just getting the little bitty droppings and refuse to get on the same table with everybody else and have good dinner.
Let's just say that we are going through identity crisis as a group. We are. Identity crisis, and that's very dangerous. Before we go any further, let me take a moment and just welcome some of the individuals who are on this show today. Thank you, Ukunna Charles, for joining us. Nosferatu, thank you. Chichi Azuru, thank you. Abdullahi Mahmoud, thank you. And Dr. Imani Ma'at, thank you all for joining this show. And I just want to read something that Dr. Imani said. The I am is God. That is why Chiism resonates with me. Thank you for that. And somebody else, Nosferatu said, they stripped who we are during colonization, the task and slavery and beyond. It is Stockholm syndrome at its core, just like Divya Yudi said. And she also has added that we seem to be the only culture who dances for massa, while others who have been through the same that we have been through said no more. That is so true. We are stuck and we make excuses. The problem is that we are stuck. We're not experiencing what nobody else has experienced. But we just kind of are stuck. We quibble, we fight, we argue. We never come up with solutions. So I'm going to ask you guys, what is the solution for all of this?
Yes, I want to answer that question. So upon dealing with this issue, I actually sent the 3 articles I wrote a couple years ago about this topic. And I'm actually going to work on one that pretty much proposes like an antidote, right? Because in my opinion, this is like a cultural cancer. There has been absolutely nothing, literally zero benefit at all to what these people have been doing. There's no benefit whatsoever to what they're doing. So I would say that the number one thing that we should do is get our mythology and folklore written down and promoted. That's step one, because quite frankly, you don't see this kind of nonsense happening with groups of people who have their own folklore and mythology very well versed, like the Yoruba. The Yoruba mythology in Africa is at the top, at the top of the list in terms of that. That's why you don't see this as much with them. I mean, there's a couple of people who try to push nonsense, but there's tremendous pushback because they have, we could talk about Shango. We can talk about Ogun. It's world known all across everyone across the world knows that. I think one of the reasons that the Hindus didn't convert is partially because of the fact that their mythology was so rich. They probably weren't even impressed by the Bible story. So it's like, well, why should we care about this story? Our stories are actually even more fantastical.
Yeah. And NwaMazi, let's be honest, our folklore, we have folklore that will blow your mind.
Yes.
Deeper than what you find in the Bible or anywhere else.
Yes.
So why are we throwing that away and embracing other people's? And I'm going to be honest with you, it's never about whose folklore is better. They have the right to celebrate their folklore, that's fine. But we too have that right. Now, I feel there's colonization all over again with this Jewish question. I see some Jewish individuals right here in the United States support the Jewish people, so-called Jewish people in Nigeria, and actually give them money and go over there and try to train them how to be Jewish. Come on, people, come on. Can we talk about that?
You know what? Talking about the cultural colonization, I see where you're coming, but let me, I'm going to involve in a little pushback on that. And the reason why I say that, colonization, as we understand it, is when somebody leaves their own homeland and comes and puts a knife in you and takes and controls everything about you and destroys everything about you. In this particular situation, we're the ones actually seeking that influence. We are the ones that are actually going out there telling stories that we are Jews. The Jews were not coming to us to tell us, hey, we're going to overrun you, we're going to colonize you, we're going to do whatever it is that we want to do to you, we're going to civilize you. We, because we are trying to escape from something, actually sought that influence to associate ourselves with the Jews, right? We're the ones doing the go get them stuff. They ain't coming to us. So what they see are people that want to be taken advantage of, and they're like, hey, what the heck? We'll take advantage of you. It's going to be beneficial to us. If we could get our tentacles in here, we're going to do it. So the Jews that were not necessarily involved in expansionism now have an avenue to do it, because you're the one asking for it, and the level of guilt that they would otherwise feel if they had gone out there on their own to influence you is non-existent. Secondly, culture is the backbone of a people, and all human systems are products of religion. You cannot build a nation if your primordial core is missing. It's like building a castle on sand.
Yes.
Right? Or jumping out of a plane without a parachute and saying, I believe in God, I'm not going to die. No, you better put parachute on, learn how to jump off a plane before you jump off. That's what we're doing. So we don't have cultural consistency. And something that the people, Igbo people, have refused to understand is the word evolution. You have to evolve. It is not everything about Igbo culture that needs to be consistent through the ages. There are certain things that need to be consistent, which has to do with your religion or spirituality. For example, live and let live. It promotes peace. Biri kan biri. From me to God, there is no distance. I don't have to look for God somewhere else. God is right here. The God I seek is in me. Do unto others as you would like Chineke to do unto you. There are certain cultural tenets that we have to maintain. Those are not negotiable. But some of them are. Some of them you have to discard. We need to evolve with the times. Igbo people need a level of centralized leadership. Igbo people used to say, or they say it, Igbo Enwegheze, which is a total misunderstanding of the idea of kingship. A lot of empires you see were forced by a specific individual or a particular family that went after, like Shaka Zulu, that decided to unite the Zulu nation. Beyond that, there were just little bitty autonomous nations. We have to have a level of cultural consistency, because culture is the backbone of the people, and it's the best weapon you have against imperialism. So instead of saying Igbo Enwegheze, maybe it's time for Igbo people to have a king. Maybe it's time for Igbo people to have centralized leadership so that we could think in unison, as opposed to maintaining a level of fragmentation that makes it easy for somebody to come from without to dictate our future. We have to, listen, it's going to take the NwaMazis, it's going to take the Ordinala people, it's going to take every organization that claims that it wants to promote our culture, our religion, and, you know, promote what's the opulence, right? so that we could be able to protect ourselves against imperialism and those people that mean us harm. We have to get to the point that in Christianism, for example, you have the Catholics, you have the Protestants, you have the cherubim and seraphims, you have the Mormons, if you want to call them Christians, you have the Coptic Church, you have a whole bunch of Christian denominations. All of them have one thing in common in different variations. They all read the Bible. Islam, they read the Quran. You have those the Sunnis, you know, you have the Shiite and a whole host of different Muslim denominations, but they all read the Quran. The reason why they became fragmented is left at the doorsteps of history. But we need to have a level of centralized way of thinking where the interest of Igbo people in general is paramount. Then we can worry about the different denominations that make this thing possible. If we want to be Chi, it's fine. If we want to be whatever else, fine. It doesn't really matter. And we need to be able to have a central core that we can all relate to. Otherwise, we're just going to be wandering around in the desert waiting for rain. But you could have been in the jungle.
I want to add something else. I agree with the premise of what you're saying. I think there's multiple solutions, right? And I think number two, since you talked about leadership. So in my opinion, right, I'm actually, you know, it's interesting when you actually look at various people around the world. You know, the Queen of England has to be Anglican. She's technically the head. The king or queen of England is technically the head of the Anglican Church.
Yes, true.
You cannot be Catholic and be the king or queen of England. The Ayatollah of Iran is the actual head of Shiites.
Yep.
Now, we have allowed people that call themselves traditional rulers to actually be promoting foreign tradition.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh my goodness.
I, in my opinion, right, when you said that Igbos should have a king, I actually not only I have to disagree with you on that. Actually, I personally think that we should be calling for abolishing the different so-called traditional rulers who are promoting.
Thank you. There you go.
I agree. It's a misunderstanding. What I mean by that, let me just, before you continue, what I'm saying is we need to have a centralized cultural base. Let me put it that way. We have to have that. It's just the way it is. You just mentioned the Queen of England, the head of the Catholic Church, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the Anglican Church, blah, 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 the Ayatollah, blah, blah, blah. The idea is to present a unified front to be able to deal with imperialism that we face on a daily basis, both socially and economically. Someone's got to look out for our interests, and we can only do it when we're together in some form.
Yeah, and I think that this is a twofold strategy. We should absolutely positively shame people who are, look, whatever people want to practice privately is on them. However, if I see a so-called traditional leader, like I said, I'm not going to name any names. There's one in Anambra in particular that has just totally, completely destroyed his that group's perception. It's a laughingstock now because he's openly wearing the tribe of Star of David. But he's just one out of many that are actively promoting foreign stuff. Now, shame those who are promoting that, and then at the same time, give credit to those who are doing the right thing and actively promoting their own people's culture and traditions.
That's right.
Right? And the thing about it is this is one thing I admire about Islam. Islam said, hey, look, we want you guys to be coming here. And once you come here, you know, it's a big, like Hajj. Hajj is a big deal. They bring in so much money. They essentially ensured that they're going to have permanent tourism until the end of time. As long as people are practicing Islam, they're going to be going to Hajj. That ensures that they're not going to ever be broke. That was brilliant. That was brilliant. And us Aros have something similar with Ikeji. Ikeji is pretty much our homecoming, and people go and do it, you know, once a year. And it's like, really, we have to go and understand. The term I like is cultural confidence. If you have cultural confidence, right, then you start promoting your own stuff and you can make money. Tourism. Tourism is a way that we can actually feed a lot of people by promoting our culture and our experiences, our rituals.
Absolutely.
Las Vegas. Las Vegas is about tourism. Dubai said, look what Las Vegas is doing. Let's do the same thing. And they've been raking in billions.
We have a program.
Let me say this, Ogele, right quick. I hope you don't mind.
No.
NwaMazi is absolutely right. And he's not late to the dance because it's been his mindset since he was a young man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was based on the scholarship that he gained or he gleaned from the information that he had enough capacity and courage to seek. NwaMazi, what you're saying is exactly what my father has been saying since 1950 with Zik, Mbono Jike, and all those people. You've seen the pictures, so you know what I'm talking about. Secondly, Ikeiji in Aruchukwu, for a better term, the New Yam Festival. Not only is it all over Igbo land, in all of West Africa, all the way to Guinea in Asia, and in South America, they practice the New Yam Festival. Secondly, in 1977, my daddy was one of the proponents of the Festac 77 instead of that. They built it up like an like the Olympics with an Olympic village called the Festac Village. They built it, and people, black folks from all over the world came to Nigeria to showcase African culture from the West Indies from Europe, from China, wherever black folks were, the Stevie Wonders, they were in Nigeria. And had a good time. Europeans came in to experience African culture. People came from all over the world. The Nigerian government made a lot of money. Businesses flourished for the 2 weeks or 3 weeks that the festival was held. And what happened after it? Everybody went back. Why did everybody go back? Because the Catholic Church in Nigeria,
Well,
if the federal government not to hold it again because it went against Christian teaching. And that's why Festac does not exist anymore. So you're absolutely right. We need some kind of tourism, and tourism usually is based on culture.
Okay, let's talk about tourism. We have a program called NwaLota. Nigeria welcomes Africans living outside the African continent. So we have in Igbo land, we have all this land that was given to us to build this village and welcome tourists to the village, and so that we can showcase African culture in all forms, in all its forms, wrestling, you name it, everything that's Igbo, we're supposed to showcase there. NwaMazi, do you know why we stopped? Because we were told that the Catholic Church must be built in the entrance. How does that promote African culture?
Beats me.
The Catholic Church could have built their church anywhere, but to build it right where the NwaLota village is, where you have the African cultural village, so that you can dictate what we do there. See, that's the thing. Those ideologies underline, I think, Nnamdi Osinri, welcome, thank you so much. Removing the underdog ideology that someone else has provided to us is necessary. We have a program that's supposed to promote African spirituality, promote African culture, everything in all its facets. But then you have to have an ideology that has to block or at least affirm first before we can do it. One of the things that NwaMazi said that I think all of us need to really think about is the fact that you cannot say you're chief, you're Nze, you're all of that, and you don't belong to a traditional culture, you don't celebrate traditional culture. You can't be that. That has got to stop. Stop giving, and I'm sorry, some people may not like this, but I tell you what, if you're going to represent African culture and hold that title, you better believe in it. Practice it. If not, You can be whatever title you want.
What's the point?
What's the point? You're supposed to be a custodian of the culture. And what are you doing? You are there. I see you brother. I saw this chief. No, he's in Z or whatever. He's dressed in Jewish attire from head to toe. And he's whatever.
You know how bad it is?
So we need to, if we can speak up on behalf of our people, then we will stay where we are. Now, let me ask you, so then, this is another point that I'm trying to make. Is Igbo spirituality Judaism?
No.
Okay.
And not just that. No, this is the comical thing. I press these people, right? They're scared of me. A lot of them have blocked me on social media because they actually know that they can't refute the points I make. They cannot answer. They cannot actually prove what they're saying. They rely on ignorance and deceit. That's what they do. There's traditional priests and priestesses in Igbo land right now. We have Dibias. We have a lot of these people who are practicing as our ancestors practiced. It does not resemble Judaism whatsoever. And that's why I'm like, well, wait a minute. Hold on here. Why are you talking about we're finding out we're really Jew? No. We can go right now. In most of our villages, we have shrines that are hundreds, if not thousands years old. And you can look at the ritual, you can look at things, and you see it has nothing whatsoever to do with the Old Testament. Nothing. The stuff is right there. But these people are professional liars, and they're trying to tell you otherwise. I asked them, I said, why didn't you go and interview a traditional priest? The traditional priest, it still exists. Why didn't you people go and interview them? Because the traditional priests will look at them like they're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean Judaism? This thing has nothing to do with the Bible. That's a lie. It's a lie. We practice a West African tradition. In fact, as it was stated earlier, the New Yam Festival is all over West Africa. Listen, in my opinion, we're part of a wider Niger River Valley culture. The Niger River touches 13, 14 nations. And in my opinion, it was probably one of the chief ways most of us got to where we got to. And our people were probably going up and down the Niger far more than people realize. Masquerades exist all over Africa. The things that we practice are all over Africa. Why do we have to go and talk about imported religion that thousands of miles away that really doesn't match up with what we're doing? Our language, right? Our language, right? Actually describes things in our territory.
That's right.
It doesn't describe things in the Middle East. We don't have words for those kind of things. It describes things, trees. It describes natural things in our own territory. We don't all the stuff they're talking about. Going what is it called, a promised land? No, we don't have such a thing of a promised land. We don't have these concepts, Messiah, Garden of Eden. We don't have that in our mythology. We don't have Abraham. There's no mention of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. People try to say Chukwu Abiyama is God of Abraham. No, it's not. That's not true.
You know what? I am so excited about this topic. And then some individuals here, K.O. Miri has written something I think we want to hear. Igbo spirituality predates Judaism. I got into an argument over this topic and shared a published journal on Igbo spirituality, and the two Hebrew Israelites I was arguing with could no longer hold their stance. It was so far beyond what they understood about the Igbo identity. Excellent. Absolutely. You know, we how do you want to claim something that's younger than you?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, here's what you got to look at. Here's the person you got to
try to hold that.
Yeah.
One more comment from, this is Nambi, that one. Creating financial development connected to cultural tenets development seems to be one of the only ways to capture the Igbo minds, because the dependence on salvation is connected to who's providing us with our food. So we want to be or believe we are something we aren't and never were. Woo, yes.
He just nailed it initially in the conversation when NwaMazi was speaking. And then, of course, I reiterated the fact that this is just business, right? These are people that are ripe to be taken advantage of. And so these people are not here for your salvation. They're here to take advantage of your ignorance and your suffering to enrich themselves, just like the pastor in the pulpit. But that's another show. We'll deal with that later on. But the premise is the same. People coming in, taking advantage of the ignorant, or people that are escaping from something, or people that are involved in some suffrage that they figured, well, if it's not working for me in this world, maybe when I die, I'll get something better. But we'll deal with that later. Here's what I wanted to say. Most religions have a creation myth. And you can tell what's original based on the creation myth. Some religions don't. Buddhism doesn't have creation myth. They just believe that events supersede one another. Like that. That's what they talk about. They don't talk about God, the creator, and all that, like Hinduism and Igbo traditional religion. In Igbo religion, at least from the perspective of people from Amapoku Idibio, the Aro people, Ohafia, Mboro, going all the way to Africa. Our creation myth is not Adam and Eve.
No.
You understand? Creation.
People don't know it though.
Creation has to always listen. These are mythologies, so they necessarily don't have to make sense sometimes. It's just giving you a sense of beginnings, right? But creation myth has to involve male and female. Because it takes male and female to make life. Even if you're a one-celled organism like paramecium and an amoeba, you still need they're asexual, if I'm correct. You still need the male and the female. Without either one, life is not possible. Now you could go back to science when you talk about how we evolved from one cell, organisms into multi-cell organisms that you have right now. But if you look at our cosmogony, right? It's got nothing to do with Adam and Eve.
No.
And that's all you got to deal with. How did Igbo people start? The first man and the first woman. I don't want to hear about the Ezenri coming from the sky, because if you read about the Ezenri, you'll find out that a lot of that stuff has to do with Jewish mythology. And it goes back to the Piscean age, right? When people were dating events based on when Jesus was born. Who made the decision to date date events based on BCEs and ADs? It's pagan. Emperor Constantine. It's pagan. If you look at Nri history, it deals with Nri history 900 years after the birth of Christ. So you cannot base human history creation unless you deal with the first man and the first woman. That's where life began. Everything else is just a story. Even the idea of the first man and woman is still a story. It's all mythology. It's not an exact science. Every culture has its own beginnings, who the first man and woman were, and all that. Christianism, Judaism tells you, no, it's Adam and Eve. Even though the Jewish history and the story of Adam and Eve is only 7,000 years old. And we know good and well that Black folks been around way beyond 7,000 years, 280,000 years to be exact, as far as human migration is concerned. So based on that, there's no way I'm Jewish. I'm a descendant of people from Aruchuku.
I want to read, thank you, Judy, that's a good one. I want to read a welcome Obi Onyoha, no how from Koro. I don't have Koro. Thank you for joining us. And she says, I'm disappointed some elements of the proud Igbo race will seek association with other groups to validate themselves, still a phenomenon of colonized mind with a Middle Eastern trajectory. That's it. That's it. You know, the Christians have done theirs. Now, the Jews have come with theirs, you know. I want to pause, if you guys don't mind. I do want to pause for a minute, and we always have to remember and honor our founder, the founder of Chiism, Godianism. Ahaike Oke Onyo, the head, the founder of Chiism, Godianism. It is so awesome that we had an opportunity to have this show. I'm going to have part 2 because we just barely touched on this issue. NwaMazi, I hope that you would be interested in returning for part 2 of this show, because we just barely touched it. And all of you who have joined us, this journey continues. We have to have another episode of this show next Sunday so that we can continue this discussion. It's not over yet. So I am not going to have a closing statement because it's not over yet. NwaMazi, can you join us next Sunday?
Yes. And I think, especially talking about, like I said, the antidote, because this, like I said, this is a full-fledged cancer.
Yes.
There's nothing short of a cancer. This goes, our African-American brethren, the Hebrew Israelites, are also, they do the same thing. They actually undermine their own African-American lineage and promote stuff that doesn't actually help them either. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I'm into looking at solutions and things and how we can move forward. Because if left unchecked, this thing was, like I said, it's going to tear, like over time, is just going to totally destroy the little we have left.
Yes.
Whatsoever. So you need to think of an antidote and put it into practice now.
Yes. I want all of you to come prepared with questions. I have one comment here that I want to read before we go, and that is from Magnus Krakwe. How can African Americans here in the US get out of that colonized mindset and find real spiritual connection? It surprises me that they still believe they are not from Africa. That's a good question, and I want my guest, NwaMazi, to think about that, because I want you to have a response next week. Dibi Otwaja, I want you to have a response next week, and I certainly will have mine. And the rest of you who have joined us today, thank you so very much. We're going to continue this conversation. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, 10 a.m., 4 p.m. in Nigeria, and you have to check the time and make sure that you know exactly when to join us. Our website is chiism.org. And the channel is Chiism of Africa. We want you to join us. You can also join us on Global Faith Ministries of Chiism on Facebook. And so let's do this again. Let's continue this journey. As we say, whatever it is you touch from now on, may it turn into gold. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you next Sunday. Good day.
Yeah, guys.
Okay.